Many swear that Tom Brady might be the greatest NFL quarterback that ever played the game, but there's arguments for other players, including the one that Timothy P. Brown is going to talk about tonight, Otto Graham of the Cleveland Browns. Tim's got a part of his collection that's very interesting to Otto Graham and was very popular back in the day, and he's got it coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of pigskindispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And welcome to another day where we get to go down that road of football history with our friend Timothy Brown of footballarchaeology.com. Tim, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Hey, Darren. Looking forward to chatting again, and hopefully this will be a comical segment.
I think it will be. Again, that's a nice segue into the subject matter we're going to be talking about. It's one of your recent tidbits titled Otto Graham and the Championship Football Comic Book. But that's as a kid, I loved comic books. I still have my comic book collection, and I love football. So these are two of my favorite things all combined into one. So this is great.
Yeah, well, so I'm old enough to remember going to, like, especially when I had a paper out and I had, more spending money than I have now. Um, I could, we still had corner drugstores back then, and I had one, 5, 6 blocks away. And, I could go in there and they had a rack of comic books. And I was more of like a Sergeant Rock, kind of a war heroes, kind of a comic book rather than a fantasy superhero guys. So, I went through the comic book stage, and but I never had an Otto Graham comic book. I know that. So this one is this is an item, So nowadays I've collected different things over the years, but now the three main things that I collect are all focused on things that I can use for football archaeology. If I don't think I can use it for football archaeology, with very few exceptions, I don't buy it. And so my three things now are RPPCs, or real photo postcards, which were like the kind of function like the, Twitter message or the, whatever of the day. Sporting goods catalogs, those with football sections, and then advertising premiums, which were, giveaways that, they're still around today. Mostly today, they're just a single card with a football schedule or a baseball schedule. You throw it in your pocket, it's in your wallet. But, back in the day, a lot of retailers of all kinds of sorts, but mostly those that attracted men, because that was kind of their target audience, they'd produce these booklets that would have like summaries of the previous seasons, and schedules of all the different teams. And so I like those because, well, all three of them provide visuals that I use in my tidbits, but these premiums also, they're just like point in time summaries of what were people thinking going into the 1952 season. Who did they project were going to be some of the top stars, some of whom you've heard of, some of whom you've never heard of, right? Just like, today, if somebody, when somebody makes predictions. So in 1954, the Pennsylvania Athletic Company, or Athletic Products Company, whatever it was, they're still around, and they're best known for the tennis balls. You'll see tennis balls that say Penn on them. That's the company. And this company made just all kinds of different balls. You name the sport, they probably made a ball for it. And they especially made a lot of rubber balls, and which I'll get back to in a little bit. So they put out this comic book, I think, 25 to 30 pages. And it was like a normal comic book, beautiful drawings, nicely printed, the whole, whole shebang. And it was a story of Otto Graham and this kid named Jimmy Farrell. and we've all known a Jimmy Farrell in our lives. It was kind of, it was basically Leave It to Beaver. It's kind of a Leave It to Beaver story before 3 years before Leave It to Beaver premiered. Not that he was a goofball like, well, he was a little bit of a goofball, but not like he was like a beaver. He's probably more of a Wally. As it turned out, he's more like a Wally than a beaver. But so, anyways, it's kind of that theme, that all American, happy family, mom and dad, and mom looks good, and dad's hardworking guy, and da da da. So Jimmy, the story opens with Jimmy. He's a fan of Fairview High School, which is in Ohio, and he just they win a big game, and so they're driving home, and he tells his mom and dad that he's going to play for Fairview someday, right? And so then, like a year or two later, Jimmy's practicing, but he's just not a natural athlete, at least not at that stage. And so he's trying to kick and he's doing all these things, and he basically just doesn't, he's not very good. So time comes for him to try out for the high school football team, and he tries out and he gets cut. And so poor Jimmy, he's just not good enough. And so then he's got to decide, okay, am I just going to fold up, or am I going to, bite the bullet and pull myself up by my bootstraps and all those good things, and
Start a
and practice. So,
start a football history podcast.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he could have done that, but he didn't.
It
He
sounds
was
like you're
smart. He
telling
was
my
smarter
story.
than he was smarter than that. So Jimmy, his dad buys him a really good ball to practice with, and it turns out, we'll find out later, that it's a pen football and probably a rubber football, which was kind of innovative at the time. And so he's takes it to the park and he's kicking it around, and he's not very good. And one time he kicks it over near this car that's parked, and there's this one man, a single man, sitting in the car watching him kick the ball around. Now, in certain neighborhoods, that might be considered, maybe a guy you don't want to go talk to. But, the guy gets out of the car and starts talking to Jimmy and patting him on the back and giving him pointers on how to play football. And then, he eventually tells Jimmy, well, if you want to get better, I'll be here every Saturday morning, and I'm willing to work with you. So again, it sounds sketchy, but he mentions to Jimmy that his parents live in Fairview, so that's why he comes there every Saturday. So Jimmy tells his parents that at dinner, and his dad says, well, that's probably Otto Graham that, who you spoke to. So then the whole thing, starts happening with Jimmy shows up every Saturday. He's got his his Pennsylvania, product ball, and Otto Graham's giving him pointers, and he gives him enough pointers where he kind of reaches a point where he says, you got to you can't keep practicing. You got to start playing. So bring your friends, and they'll start playing too. So then Otto's, drilling all those kids and giving them pointers on, here's how you kick the ball, here's how you punt the ball, here's how you pass the ball, here's how you hand it off, here's how you tackle. And so all the boys are having fun. They build their own goalposts, in the park, which I think is just a normal thing to do. And so then eventually, the year passes, and Jimmy tries out for the team the next year. And he is so impressive that the coach names him the quarterback. And so before the first game of the season, Otto Graham comes over, has dinner with mom and dad, on Friday night. They play the game on Saturday. Sure enough, Jimmy throws the touchdown pass to win the game. And, they all lived merrily or happily ever after. So, it's just kind of a cool thing, just here's this guy who is an absolute stud, Otto Graham. And so he's in this comic book, and then he ends up retiring after that 54 season, though Paul Brown convinced him to come back the next year. And then he was finally done. But it was like, one of these succession stories where Jimmy Farrell is going to, Yeah, we're going to miss Otto Graham, but there's this whole line of new young stud quarterbacks who are going to be coming up through the system, and Jimmy Farrell's one of them. So it's kind of a Horatio Alger, rags to riches, American story. I mean, it's just fabulous and
Great.
beautifully, artwork's just great. So
It's a great story. Definitely a great feel-good story. Unless you're like me and you live in Western Pennsylvania. And we had our mutual friend Jeff Payne on not too long ago, and was
yeah,
showing me some cards that were made by Penn at that of the Cleveland Browns and those great Browns teams with the Otto Graham was on. Otto Graham was one of the trading cards that he had, these sheets. And like I told him, and Jeff's from Western Pennsylvania as well. And I'm sort of thinking, okay, in that time frame, if only Penn would have invested a little bit in some Pittsburgh Steelers memorabilia, maybe guys like Johnny Unitas and Len Dawson and Jack Kemp, maybe one of those quarterbacks would have stayed in Pittsburgh if they would have been
yeah,
honored like Otto Graham was, and Steelers would have done better back then. But they helped an Ohio team. What are you going to
yeah, yeah. Well,
do? And
I
it's
don't know what to
interesting.
tell you.
We Fairview, Pennsylvania is probably it's probably about 5 miles from me, so it's less than 20 miles from the Ohio line. So that resonates a little bit there too. And they were always a football powerhouse too. So it's maybe it's just the name Fairview uh,
Yeah,
makes that. So
yeah. So I don't know. Like for me, it was just like I came across that thing, and it's one of those things where most of these items that I'm buying, they're not worth a whole lot of money. This one's worth a little bit more, but I think I paid $5 for it. But it's just such an entertaining piece of little, football history and advertising history that, it's just really fun.
you just took me back. You telling that story, it just takes me back like you were reading me a nighttime story. I'm ready to hit the hay now. So I
Yeah.
thank you for that too. That's good stuff.
Sweet dreams, my prince. Right.
Yeah. Now, Tim, you have a lot of different interesting things, whether it be comic books or these RPPCs or just an interesting story about the great game that we all love and enjoy, and that's why we're all here tonight and listening and viewing this. Maybe you could tell us how folks can read some of your items that you have in football archaeology.
Yeah. So, it's all sitting there on a site called footballarchaeology.com. There's about 1,000 articles out there now. So you can just go in there. There's search functions, so you can search topics, see if there's something out there on it. And if once you're out there, you can subscribe. You'll get an email whenever I send out whenever I publish a new story. Alternatively, you can follow me on Twitter, on Threads, or on the Substack app. So whatever suits your fancy.
Well, Tim, we appreciate it once again for the great story and a great look at football back some 70 some years ago, and just enjoyable story and feel good story. Whether you're not a Browns fan or you are a Browns fan or not, so I still feel good about it. So that's a great thing with a football legend, and indeed, a guy that won 7 championships in the 10 years that he played. That's better than Tom
Yeah.
Brady, and so
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
he was something else. He was something
Yeah.
else.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we thank you, and we would love to talk to you about some more great football history next week.
Very good, and sleep well.
Peeking up at the clock, the time's running down. We're going to go into victory formation, take a knee, and let this baby run out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back tomorrow for the next podcast. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Jean Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.